Good evening. This is the December 20th meeting of the Energy Advisory Committee, and I will call the roll. Kevin Charette is absent tonight. He's at the high school music and concert. Tom Rooney is here. Ben D'Antonio.
Present.
Peter Somsich is absent. I thought Peter was going to make it. And I'm John Tabor. And we also have Peter Britz, the Planning and Sustainability Director for the city, and Kate Homay, who's our Sustainability Officer from the Planning Department, and Stephanie Secord, who faithfully supports us. Thanks everybody for getting together at the end of the year, nearly Christmas. Let's not make it too long tonight. I think our purpose is really to get a sense from each of you what you think our big areas of activity should be for next year. And I think this will be just a chance to discuss things. We can't take actions till we get reappointed. I think it's at the start of a conversation about setting a mission and goals for the next term. We've obviously had a productive 2-year term that ends this month with the rollout of community power, which is going well. And just so you can't stand the suspense, I know draft rates are 8.1 cents lower than the Eversource 8.9 cents.
8.1 cents lower.
No, 8.1 being the new rate versus
Yeah.
versus Eversource's 8.9.
Okay, still lower.
And there's reductions in all of the Green 50 and Green 100, and so we are continuing to do better than Eversource. I think when you figure in, according to Brian Calnan's chart, 20% of the coalition's revenue is going to reserves. So that means, and those reserves benefit all of the communities. So we're building our Portsmouth reserve, and that means the effective rate is about 6.5 cents if you factor in what the reserves are doing. Now that's my estimate. That's not a hard number from Kevin. So that was good news to get and reassuring. Eversource was significantly lower than Unitil and Liberty. So they put some competitive pressure on, and the coalition was able to come up with good rates. Those start in February. So now those have to be voted tomorrow, but those are the draft rates. And there'll be a press release going out sometime in the afternoon tomorrow. So
A quick question, as the reserves get built up, what can the reserves specifically be used for? Right, can it be used? I mean, can the city of Portsmouth use some of those reserves to incentivize?
I haven't introduced you, Herb.
Yeah, sorry.
Herb Lloyd is on the Sustainability Committee and is nominated, has put his application in for
To join
this
all
one.
of you folks. Yeah, good to meet you.
And you saw his roadmap to solar energy in the packet.
Just a disclaimer, that was several months old.
Yeah, it's
It's
rough.
New thoughts.
It's thinking, but that's all we're doing tonight is thinking.
Yeah.
In answer to your question, we had a good conversation with Brian Calnan about that. We can, the first tranche of reserves that are being built up now is so that we have 120 days
Mhm.
of
Operating.
cushion, of
Across the
operating
gap.
cushion. it's also so that the coalition can get a credit rating and credit facility, which benefits everybody. But we can add an increment to our reserves for any projects that we might want to do. Ben, did I get that? You were saying, looking
Yeah.
like,
We ultimately will have discretion over the ability to direct funds to projects or programs at our discretion to be determined.
Yep.
We also have the ability to add a couple of mills here and there if we want to,
Okay.
down by town basis to further those same objectives. But we haven't talked about what we would want to do, when, if, how, any of that stuff, because I think we've been waiting on the couple of years that I think they said it was gonna take before they have adequate reserves.
That, if I heard correctly, that's happening a lot faster than I had anticipated, right? That-
I don't know.
it did for the,
120-day
Yeah.
is, I mean,
they got
that's,
to 30 days faster than they thought.
yeah,
They're still saying it's gonna be quite a while to get to.
okay. So,
But there's a
90.
huge lead time, so it makes sense to ask the question and to start thinking about it.
yeah,
Just a couple other thoughts. I think let's just exchange thoughts tonight on what are the areas of inquiry that we want to do. I enclosed in your packet a look at other energy committees around the state and what they do. There's a lot of range in that. Some are just, how do we make our municipal government or town government save money? Some are their energy committee does the entire sustainability work for the town. And there's anything in between. I also enclosed a draft of some of the major points of the sustainability plan that's being developed now, so that we could look at that. But to me, there's a lot to do. First, we always are going to be the steward of Portsmouth Community Power. And so we'll, go into informing the public about these rates in the week ahead, and then we have our own program of work to try and get more people to use the Green 100 and Green 50 in those levels. I think another area that our committee can really help the city, because of the expertise that you all have, is to look at larger scale solar in ways that can benefit residents. And to me, what's most attractive is larger scale solar that is not something installed by another company that takes the power and exports, but some way that we can benefit our residents. I think there's another area, whole area of how can we help the city lighten its carbon footprint and save money, whether it's solar, electric vehicles, batteries, and storage solutions. Because if we can save money for the city, that saves that lower operating cost is less burden on the taxpayer. So there's a lot of solar programs happening right now. There's a lot of federal money. If we could piece through that and find the opportunities, I think there'd be a lot of value to the city for that. I was intrigued to see the city of Lebanon had an energy element in their master plan. And that might be something we'll discuss too, because that work will start in the summer. So those were some of my thoughts. But I hope you all had a chance to read some of the sustainability plan and what the other committees are doing around the state. And I'd love to hear from each of you. We have a new term, another 2-year license to do good for the city and where might we best apply our energies. And so welcome. Your thoughts, Tom, or your thoughts, Ben, or your thoughts, Herb?
Well, looking at everything you included, I was thinking maybe something in our charter or whatever we'll eventually put together to align with the climate action plan. Is that what so, maybe specifically energy related components of that plan. So we're not essentially, going over the same ground, but maybe
Yeah.
prioritizing.
Yeah, and if you go through the climate action plan so far, there are a lot of energy related items, a lot of solar related items. So
Especially like the ones that get a 5 on impact and a 1 on cost.
Yeah.
yeah, that's the oft used expression, low hanging fruit. Yeah, I could see aligning around those. And Peter, correct me if I'm wrong, but my sense is that the sustainability committee, now permanent, is sort of painting with a broader brush. There's nobody aside from you and Kate, who dig into the details of how to implement things.
I'd say that's in general, that's true. It's kind of been the case all along. They don't limit themselves to one sector or area, but there are some initiatives that the committee has taken and they follow through on.
Yeah.
In different ways. So you kind of get focused on an item and follow through on it
Right.
along the way. I think there's a lot of interest in getting some of these items into the capital plan.
Yeah.
Which would be next year. I think the mayor put it that if he sees a lot of community support for the cap, then that's the signal to the city council that the community supports spending more money on these things.
Mhm.
So that's kind of what we're hoping out of the cap, is that we get a lot of support. We held back $20,000 for implementation of nothing defined, but we were thinking some of these elements could be looked at for that, so we can at least hit the ground running with something.
Mhm.
And then strategize on how to push forward for future
Yep.
projects. That's the way we've been looking.
Well, Councillor Cook and I talked too about when this group researched community power, we did some pretty good in-depth research, interviewed people, looked at the different cases, and I think that's the kind of value that we can provide. We can look at some of these areas and bring in experts, have areas of inquiry where we flesh out what can be done. So, but Tom, what I hear you saying is, let's create a charter where we align ourselves with the Climate Action Plan and the Sustainability Committee.
Yeah, and it seems to me that the discussions can get really broad pretty quickly, and where a fair amount of work has already been done to, get this where it is, maybe using that to sort of make our universe a little bit more finite on what we want to dig into.
Yeah, right. Ben, your thoughts?
Thank you. I think I wrote into my application for reappointment some thoughts I had. So I pulled that up, and I think we should continue to support the community power implementation as you suggest. And to the extent that the city is the time is appropriate and the opportunity is there, and a willingness to look at what the municipal energy supply contract and, what those, long-term outlook looks like.
Yep.
I agree. I'm interested in the interactions between the city's climate action plan, the potential for future energy projects and energy efficiency services. And I think we've talked a bit about energy related educational programming.
Mm,
How, some of the high school kids want to champion a project and they have a teacher that's, trying to get them to do meaningful things. If there are things we can continue to support their efforts or
right.
amplify them or whatnot. I think those are all good activities. So, kind of supporting what other folks have said, but those are some things that I think would be helpful. Maybe to that end, it might be helpful to see what we think of our, reliability and resilience of the local system has been like. Do we have outages? Do we have critical needs that we want to think about making sure they're protected from outages? One of the things you talk about in addition to maybe a future energy project like a supply resource like solar could be like a microgrid or a battery system where, if there are important things that we want to make sure are able to ride through an interruption in supply, you think about, wiring those up to a microgrid or a battery of those sorts. So kind of trying to think about it holistically if possible. Take a look at the hosting capacity map of the grid around here. Looks like a lot of hosting capacity is pretty ample in the historic district, and I don't know if we're going to see a lot of solar in that area. But another area of the city, I think, or at least the local area, is over at Pease. There's a lot of commercial facilities over there with a lot of rooftop, and so maybe there's a nexus there that we could explore or whatnot. But there's plenty of ideas out there, and I agree, trying to find the ones that have already been surfaced and have a potential for being included in consideration with funding from the budget and whatnot. I think that's all good ideas.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like the notion of Peas. You think of the rooftop areas there. And
I have a question about sort of the battery idea. Makes me think of it and more the grid resilience piece. Is there rules about how far community power can go into the sort of the distribution network, or would we be crossing over some line if we did certain projects? Is there that you guys know of? I mean, I don't know how it all works, but how clean a line is that, and what we can and can't do, and when, I don't know if that's something we have to explore with the coalition or what, but to me, it seems like I love the idea of battery storage and better grid potential for charging stations and things like that all over the city, but I don't know how far community power goes, or if that's more of a
Eversource. yeah.
Eversource rule.
Well, I think anything on the other side of the meter would involve Eversource,
Some degree, yeah.
right? Yeah,
But could be a third party. I think it's a great question, and we should certainly explore it and see what they can do and how we can leverage what they're capable of doing. But my sense is that a supply project where you're going to buy the output, they can bring in a bunch of people to help buy the output to help finance the project and make it work. So if we wanted to host a local supply project, that I think overlaps with their capabilities quite well. Batteries, not so much. Resilience and restoration times, being able to keep your critical circuits on, that's a different thing. And there are third parties out there that do great jobs. Obviously, I think the interconnecting utility will need to be involved regardless of what your plans are. I don't think it needs to be there, the service provider, but yeah.
But it is true, the more mature community power entities like Northern California and Cape Cod Compact, they already offer their customers solar battery options,
Right.
time shifting options. And I think that's something that CPCNH wants to do at the residential level. I think when you talk about overall like big infrastructure like the city, how do we make the city resilient? That's a harder question, but I do think that's something the city could tackle on its side of the meter. Um, and it could be more and more important. Because losing power is expensive. It's not only disruptive, but it gets into all kinds of expensive workarounds. When we were at the newspaper, it would cost us $25,000 a day to rent a generator. You know, that would come in on a trailer, and we were just a little, 200-person company.
Diesel generator doesn't have the best emissions profile either.
Yeah, pretty dirty. So those are good, Ben. I think let's not pass over the education piece and thinking of the high school kids who want to do that, but also how do we educate residents on reducing their energy consumption, negawatts instead of megawatts, in ways that they can reduce consumption. And that gets into energy and efficiency in houses, and there's a whole education piece there. Peter, I'm never clear on where the biggest savings are, but I gather that home insulation is equal to, is a big one. In terms of reducing energy.
And then it reduces the demand too, so.
Right.
Yeah, especially if people are starting to do residential battery storage.
Mhm.
So they're producing during the day and they're using most of that electricity off, off hours or in the nighttime hours, so. Kind of overall, I mean, I think from a grid perspective, I mean, this can be fairly positive because we talk about offsetting the usage of heat pumps. The load that potentially could put on the grid, the heat pumps and charging EVs. But if you're producing, there's a few people I know here in town that have EVs, have heat pumps and have solar arrays, and are looking at or doing battery storage right now. So, they're pretty much flat. They're not, they're not consuming any electricity, but they're not putting electricity back into the grid. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's something that we should be aware of too, is how are some of these new technologies that we're implementing, how do they impact the grid?
Yeah, although I don't know that all we can do is advocate on that.
All we
But-
can, but just
Yeah.
being aware and then providing education to residents too.
Yeah.
To say, hey, look, there's some smart directions that you may want to look at planning for in the future.
And I was hearing you say there's capacity for interconnects for
The host, you mentioned
Hosting.
Seen this? This is one of the coolest things out there. There's a hosting capacity heat map.
oh,
So Eversource puts out it's called the DG hosting capacity map. It's an online resource where it shows the grid in colors, and where it's green, there's ample capacity to interconnect your distributed generation project. Where it's, orange, not so much, and where it's red, it's, well, hold up, because we may need to expand here. So you can help you geo target where a good place might be, and it just so happens that which commercial facilities over in Newington or in LA. And there's ample hosting capacity over there. I don't know.
Sure.
Whereas, in Portsmouth, it looks like it's mostly historic district and, Islington. And,
right. Yeah, not as much.
there's certainly technical potential there. I just, I read stuff in the newspaper.
In the historic district.
I
Stay away from Facebook. Too many,
I got off social media 5 years ago.
too many opinions.
Well, that's good to know, though.
It's neat.
Yeah,
So the capacity in the historic district being the number of roofs? That, how does it,
So hosting capacity is just, do you have a pipe that's fully full or not? If the pipe is full, there's no more room to carry, power that's going either way.
just the grid capacity?
It's the local distribution grid capacity to accommodate new resources or new loads coming on. Here it's distributed generation, so it's calibrated from new things like solar. So it shows you where, because you don't want to put it someplace where it's full, because then you trigger an expensive upgrade. So
mhm. Well, I'm sure Newington's got lots of capacity because that's where the generating plants were.
that's at the transmission level. This is the distribution level.
Yeah.
That's the smaller stuff. That's what
Okay.
we'd be looking at. Solar is so big that we're at lower wattages, that's all.
Um, I mean, that's the kind of analysis that we can do is say, well, solar is great, but where's the capacity to
Mhm.
pop it in?
Because if we want to think about future projects, we kind of have to have a few different circles in the Venn diagram overlap to find the ones that have merit.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's one of them.
Yeah. Peter, from your perspective, how do we put this committee to work to align with the climate action work that the larger group is doing? Just
Yeah,
thoughts.
I think just the fact that this committee, what it accomplished in 2 years, getting community power here, has an opportunity to do a huge amount of improvement. And I think the one thing we've touched on already, but would be worth following through on and doing more with, is that opting up.
Mhm.
We have the mechanism in place right now. If people opt up to greener power, that right there, that switch could be a significant difference for the whole city.
With no investment on that. part.
Really not much, but only for the people that have to invest, and they're not, it's not a huge burden to pay a little bit more. But it's education, so many people you talk to don't really understand their power bill or what community power is, and they're supportive of it and they like the idea of it, for the most part, the people that I talk to, but not a lot of people understand what opting up means, I don't think. So I think that would be a great place to start, is to
Yeah.
continue that. Like, how do we do more?
Yeah.
How does
Yeah.
the committee do more to get that moving? And is there resources we need to put towards it? Is there ways to educate people easily?
Yep.
I don't know how to message it, figuring out ways to message it easily.
Yeah.
And when, to me, it seems like the committee has a huge role. It's gonna have an endless role of managing every time a new rate comes out.
Yep.
Any changes that we make, any projects that come up, I think at some point. The
Yep.
committee might need to have staff or something, I would think, down the road, a few years maybe.
Yeah.
If projects are happening and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think if you go through our minutes from September and October, we had some great ideas to nudge people on opting up. We just have to get those going. I was going to talk to Monty about a whole communications program. But he's a guy who's pulled in many directions.
And then just to follow up on it, I think that you mentioned energy efficiency. Just tackling that too. We're doing education, something that could be rolled in with it. It's a big, scores high on the low hanging fruit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's something that, because I've been part of this note taking and processing the thoughts, and have been doing a lot of our communications and outreach specific to this committee, that's still in my wheelhouse. So that's, and Monty and I work together on that.
No, you've been great. super supportive for us. Herb, any thoughts?
Yeah. Peter and Kate know, I always have thoughts. I appreciate joining all you folks here. Yeah, I like the idea of make planning, maybe 1 to 3 years out, and maybe we look at, what do we accomplish, what are our goals in 2024? And then 2025 and 2026, because some things that we choose to act on have a longer runway. And some things you can't do in 12 months. And so I think it would be great.
I don't think there's anything you can do in the 12.
Oh, I think there's
You
some
can,
things.
you can stop things.
Well, but you could, for example, we could have a goal, could have goals related to current Portsmouth community power and increasing,
Mhm.
what are some of the numbers? I can't remember, like 0.7 to 1.3 or something. Right? I mean, so those are things that we could achieve within 12 months is, goals around that, for example. And that may be some of the things that we choose for the next 12 months. And there may be some goals to lay a foundation for something that we'll actually execute on or implement in 24 or 36 months. But I think the having multi-year goals is something that's really important because, again, there's a runway. I'm new coming into this, but I see this committee is providing technical expertise. And so I think versus the sustainability committee, a lot of great people in the sustainability committee, but folks in this space have a lot of very specific technical expertise when it comes to energy. And so I think maximize, as we start looking at roles and responsibilities, I brought this up at this meeting 2 meetings ago, and I brought the same concern up at the last sustainability meeting is I feel that we just need to be clear on the roles and responsibilities of swim lanes between these 2 committees. And Tom, what you were saying is they're supporting each other, but they're, not crossing over unless we intentionally want them to, come together at some point on some initiatives. So I think that's pretty important. Community power, again, I think there's a lot of opportunities through education in 2024 to get some of our numbers, like for a Clean 100, Clean 50, even Granite Plus, to get those numbers up and move people from basic to those other plans. So I think that's something we really probably should focus on in 2024 personally. I also see this committee advising the city of Portsmouth on projects in the future that city staff doesn't have the expertise, like community power would have been one of those. Brownfield solar array. Spoke with a few people at the CNH LES conference, and things are really changing, not only in the state, but at the federal level about building solar arrays in brownfield, doing brownfield installations. Federal funding is there for brownfield. And so, I think that's something that I know that this committee could advise the city on and do more research on. I know Brian Getz and Peter Rice have done, and others have done research, and there's been studies done at Jones, but those are several years old and a lot's changed since then. Portsmouth Housing Authority. That's another one that, I think that's a unicorn. When you're talking about socioeconomic disadvantaged, there's a lot of IRA dollars and other federal funds for something like Portsmouth Housing Authority. I don't know, what do they have, 13 buildings or something? In some cases, and that might be 100% funded through federal funds.
Mhm.
for, solar arrays on some of these buildings. So I think there's another opportunity for this committee. Again, it's, I look at that as kind of like technical expertise. And the last meeting, this committee in the last meeting, Solarize campaign was brought up. And I know that's something I've had conversations with CENH about. And they said they've yet to see anybody in the state do a Solarize campaign for commercial properties. And mostly they think it's an education thing. And the commercial property owners, nobody's reaching out to them. The Solarize campaigns in this state have always been focused on residential, never commercial. And you look over in Pease, there's a lot of commercial properties and some other places in the city too. So, that's maybe something, another, again, technical expertise that this committee. I don't want to take up too much time. Those are just
No,
a few,
that's
a few
list.
ideas.
It's a great
throw
list.
out there.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity in the solar for lower income. Kendra Ford, who lives on Clinton Street, has been working in that space for about 5 years now. And she wants to talk to the Energy Committee and about some of the programs that there are out there. And there's federal money to build solar that becomes community solar for low income people that they can access without having to put their own solar installations in. And then there's opportunities for, like you say, PHA and others.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a good one to pursue. I mean, I think I'm hearing a pretty clear consensus around getting our green Granite Plus, Green 50, Green 100 up and having some goals around that. And I think that one falls right into our work so far and supports the climate action plan. The low income solar, I'd love to spend a meeting or two getting some experts in here who know all that, because there seems to be a profusion of programs. And
Yeah. It's a grant specialist we need. The technical end of it's fairly straightforward. It's just getting the right grants.
right.
And is PHA directly associated with the city?
No. It's its own entity
Okay.
with its own board. And actually owns its own property. So, back in, I think, the 70s, housing authorities, there was legislation in Congress to create housing authorities. And they raised their own money and run their own operations, and that they were given, people can invest in housing authority projects and they get tax credits.
Right.
And so that's the I think I love the idea of some kind of larger scale solar project in the city that benefits all the residents. I don't know, that may be one of those on the long runway though. But I sure would like to know more about it.
Jones Ave is, there's a big piece of property sitting there and things are changing around.
The southern aspect too, sloping to the south. It's just
Oh, yeah.
waiting for the insulation. But it would take some research that the state, if we don't do anything, it's fine, but if we're gonna put anything out there, there'd have to be studies on what's capped and how it could handle any kind of load that solar would put on it. Which I don't think is much, but
It's an old landfill. Yeah.
it's.
In the federal government, they've got people that will come in and talk to us. I've spoke with some of the folks up at UNH that work for the DOE. And, they're working with Lonza and they're working with a lot others here in Portsmouth and other adjacent cities. The DOE is,
Yeah, they have a lot of funds and grant programs too.
and I asked two gentlemen from the professors up at UNH that, have grants from DOE, and they said, yeah, we'll come down to Portsmouth.
Hmm.
What do you guys need? They said, we have I think there was 2,000 people that they can access that are in similar advisory roles across the country. They said, yeah, we've got access to a lot of expertise. Like, these are tax dollar, funded programs that we should take advantage
Right.
of.
Right.
But again, I think it takes a committee like this to do the legwork.
Right.
And find these programs, find these people and,
Yeah.
get things off the ground.
Right. And we've got time to do that.
Yeah.
Would we be able, as the majority member of the Coakley landfill group?
I was waiting for that one. So the Coakley landfill is a great site also in terms of large amount of open space that's mowed annually. So it's just an open field setup with one of the highest points in the seacoast, really. So there's not a lot of trees blocking it. There's some hurdles that have to be overcome there. Ownership is one of them. The group that was set up to manage the Superfund site is just that. They're a group that was set up to manage the Superfund site, so they wouldn't be able to entertain a solar project in their reason for being. Their only reason for being is to clean up the site. So that's what they're formed for. So
Hmm.
it would be a conversation outside of that. We'd have to figure out how to have that conversation and think about it. But yeah, it's certainly something to keep in mind and think about. It's, any big area like that. A lot of Superfund sites are getting solar panels on them because, the reality is they're not going to go away.
Right.
They're capped and they're going to be there for a long time. And so they're good locations for that. What I don't understand, and I think the technical support would help, is Jones Ave. I know when we looked at that, and we looked at Coakley at one point as well. And it was before the net metering laws changed for Coakley. It wasn't worth it to do anything at Coakley unless it was a megawatt, and you couldn't do a megawatt net metered. But now everything's changed a little bit in that.
Now you
front.
can do 5.
So
yeah.
It's the run of the power from the solar panels. How close do you have to be to the grid, to make it worthwhile? And that's the math that has to be done there. I think first to see if it's even feasible. And then I think the net metering rules have changed enough to allow bigger arrays and bigger setups that would give you the economy of scale you need.
Ben, we can look at your map for Breakfast Hill Road.
Yeah.
Does everybody know what Coakley landfill is?
Yeah, it was in the paper quite a while.
Yeah.
Quite a bit. It's off of Breakfast Hill. I didn't realize that. Yeah, I guess it's on the.
Someone's-
Behind the church, the access road
Oh,
is
yeah.
behind the church.
It hasn't been in the newspaper recently though, which
No.
I'm guessing is a good thing.
Right. But it's still got all that PFAS down there.
And the landfill at Jones Ave, does it go right down to the water? Is that it? That field
Close,
that-
goes down to the salt marsh. Yep.
right.
The slope goes right down. The edge of the toe of the slope is the salt marsh.
Yeah.
So pretty much.
Right, the question there is, does the city want that as recreation land or as solar farm? And, or, it's a big piece of land, you could do both, but
Yeah,
it's very attractive recreation land that nobody uses, really.
really is. Yeah. I mean, it is that southern aspect for solar, but for
Yeah.
fields and walking and all that is really nice.
Mhm.
I mean, that's why the rooftop is so attractive. Rooftops and
Parking canopies.
parking
Yeah.
canopies, things like that. It makes so much sense because you're already using that space for something. You're not taking up open space.
Yeah, I was at Portsmouth Hospital yesterday and walked through that parking lot. And I thought, you know, there's another opportunity for education is, you know, I don't know if Portsmouth Hospital owned by a big corporation, but you know, are some of these commercial property owners in Portsmouth, are they aware of, you know, the IRA and some of the funds that are available, federal funds? And, you know, what a project would look like for them to put parking canopies over, especially if you're gonna rehab a parking lot. If you're gonna go and tear it up anyway, like the high school, you know.
Yeah.
Why not throw that in and do some cost analysis and see cost benefit analysis and see if it makes sense.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I think there's some things that are obviosities like boosting the green 50 and green 100. It's simple and clear what the roadmap to that is. But when we get into how do we get our residents to benefit from solar, whether it's large community solar farms or low income programs, you know, that's a big ball that of string that I can't quite pull apart. So, you know, there's work to do on that. And you know, I think the whole area of resilience, Ben, I think that would be a real service to the city if we figure some of that out. And the whole idea of storage and shifting times of usage, that aligns with the coalition, that also aligns with the climate action plan. It saves people money. I think there are federal incentives coming. I'm sure the utility would like to see that too, so that they don't have peak loads in the, you know, it's very expensive for them to have peaker plants and things like that. Okay, well, our hour is nearly up. I think what I would propose is take all the things we've discussed and make a list of them. And when we get back together, give you 5 votes, and you can stick your votes on the things that you think are the best use of our collective brains and energy. And then we'll sort of get a focus. I like to think of our purpose as, you know, if we weren't here, why would we be created? Well, I think you'd want a committee that gives lower costs and lower carbon energy as a future to our city and our residents. And what are the best ways to do that? So that was my what's a mission thought, but I'll toss that out there, and you guys can we'll wordsmith that some more. Anything else for the good of the effort? We have one more opening. We used to have Rebecca O'Brien used to be on this committee and left us midway through the term. And she was great. She was a marketing brain and a communications brain, which is a good thing to have. We've lost Allison, so we're a little overweighted with males. And I always find committees work better with both sexes. So if you guys know of anybody for that additional opening, I'd love names that we can give to the mayor. I do think there's value in having somebody like Rebecca who says, oh, I know how we could communicate that.
Mhm.
And she helped us out a lot when we were bringing the awareness of community power up, or trying to anyway. I think we did better than many communities, but it always amazes me how much work it takes to explain things in a day when there's not a dominant local medium anymore. So, any other thoughts? If not, we'll head off into the night.
Do we need to approve the minutes? Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah, Ben.
Will you be back, John?
Hmm?
Will you be back?
Oh, yeah.
And Counselor Cook as well?
It's pretty busy. Let me ask her. I think she's on, she hasn't given me a yes or no.
I remember Counselor Lazenby was also really passionate about these issues and
Yeah,
he brought a lot of good energy to the committee.
yeah, he did. Absolutely. That's somebody that, and thought of that, but he's a natural.
Mhm.
Yeah, if you think of names, shoot me an email. And yes, we do have to approve the minutes in your packet. I'd wait a motion to approve the minutes from the November 16, 2023 meeting.
I did have one. There's a typo in that I'm in there as Tim. Sorry, it's okay.
He's the home inspector.
Is that right?
Yeah, Tim Rooney. There's a Tim Rooney who's a home inspector.
And there's another one that Ben pointed out that it says PCPNH instead of CPCNH.
Oh, right. I think it'd be something else.
Motion to approve the minutes as modified.
So moved.
Okay,
I'll second that.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. All right. Well, thank you all. Have a great Christmas,
Thank you.
and it's been a good term. It's been a good 2 years of,
Very productive.
and I really appreciate the tremendous expertise you brought in. Grinding through drafting the energy aggregation plan and things like that. Not for the faint of heart.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Stuff.
So is it which day are you gonna target for meetings? Is there one yet? Or do you want to hold off?
We usually do the third Wednesday,
Third Wednesday. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
but Allison had Conservation Commission, so that we often had to roll to Thursdays. But we probably could do Wednesdays, third Wednesdays. I would think. But we gotta get ourselves reappointed.
Yep. Yep.
So,
That's good. That's a good day.